If you think retirement for police dogs means peaceful walks in the park, wait until you hear what this canine officer uncovered near an abandoned cemetery on a cold October night. The rain hammered against the windshield as Officer Marcus Chen pulled into the gravel parking lot of Riverside Cemetery. It was 11:47 p.m., and what should have been a routine patrol check had turned into something entirely different. In the passenger seat, Rex, a 7-year-old German Shepherd with distinguished grey patches around his muzzle, pressed his nose against the glass, his breath fogging the window. Rex wasn't supposed to be here. After 6 years of exemplary service with the Riverside Police Department, he'd officially retired 3 months ago. A minor hip injury and department budget cuts had forced an early end to his career, but Marcus couldn't bring himself to leave his partner behind completely. So here they were, on what Marcus called unofficial patrols, late-night drives that kept them both connected to the work they loved. The cemetery had been abandoned for nearly a decade. Riverside's rapid development had left this small, historic graveyard isolated between a busy highway and a construction zone. The city maintained it minimally, mostly just mowing the grass twice a year and checking for vandalism. Tonight's call had come from a concerned citizen who'd spotted flashlights moving between the headstones. As Marcus stepped out of the cruiser, the October air cut through his jacket like ice water. The rain had turned to a fine mist that made everything slick and treacherous. He reached for his flashlight, but before he could even click it on, Rex was out of the car and moving with purpose toward the cemetery's rusted iron gate. "Easy, boy," Marcus whispered, following his partner's lead. Even in retirement, Rex moved with the confident precision of a working dog. His ears were forward, his body low and alert. Something had captured his attention. The cemetery stretched out before them like a forgotten movie set. Weathered headstones tilted at odd angles, their inscriptions worn smooth by decades of weather. Ancient oak trees created a canopy of shadows that seemed to shift and breathe in the misty darkness. The beam of Marcus's flashlight revealed patches of overgrown grass, broken flower vases, and the occasional glint of broken glass. Rex padded silently between the graves, his nose working the air. Marcus had seen this behavior thousands of times during their active years together. Rex was tracking something, but what could be out here at midnight in an abandoned cemetery? They moved deeper into the graveyard, past monuments dating back to the 1890s. The names carved in stone told the story of Riverside's early families, immigrants who'd built the town from nothing, children who'd died too young, veterans of forgotten wars. The silence was broken only by the sound of their footsteps on wet leaves and the distant hum of highway traffic. Then Rex stopped. He was standing beside a large marble monument topped with a stone angel, its face weathered beyond recognition. The dog's entire body had gone rigid, his tail straight out behind him like a pointer. This wasn't just interest. This was the same stance Rex had taken when they'd uncovered drug stashes, located missing persons, and found evidence that had solved dozens of cases. Marcus approached carefully, his hand instinctively moving to his radio. "What is it, Rex? What do you smell?" The German Shepherd began to circle the monument, his nose practically pressed to the ground. With each pass, his movements became more agitated. He whined softly. A sound Marcus had learned meant Rex was frustrated, like he'd found something important but couldn't communicate what it was. Marcus played his flashlight over the monument, looking for anything unusual. The inscription was standard. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, beloved wife and mother, 1862-1923. Fresh flowers lay at the base, unusual for such an old grave in an abandoned cemetery, but not unheard of. Some families still visited, even after all these years, but Rex wasn't interested in the flowers. He was focused on something else entirely. The dog moved to the left side of the monument and began to dig. His powerful paws sent dirt and wet leaves flying. Marcus had seen Rex dig before, during training exercises and real searches, but never with this kind of desperate intensity. The German Shepherd was focused in a way that made Marcus's pulse quicken. "Rex, what are you—" Marcus began, then stopped. His flashlight beam had caught something in the freshly disturbed earth, something that didn't belong in a century-old grave. It was a corner of blue fabric, recent fabric, the kind of synthetic material used in modern clothing. Marcus felt his stomach drop. In 6 years of working with Rex, the dog had never given a false alert. If Rex was digging here, if he'd detected human scent at this specific spot, then something was very wrong. The rain began to fall harder, drumming against the monument and turning the disturbed earth into mud. Marcus pulled out his radio to call for backup, but Rex's behavior was becoming more frantic. The dog was digging faster now, his whines becoming more urgent. More fabric appeared, definitely blue, definitely recent. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Instead of waiting for backup, he knelt beside Rex and began to help dig. His hands were shaking, from cold, from adrenaline, or from the growing certainty that they'd stumbled into something much bigger than a routine cemetery check. What they found in the next few minutes would not only shock Marcus to his core, but would also prove that Rex's instincts were more powerful than anyone had ever imagined. Because buried beneath that century-old monument was something that would unravel a mystery the entire town had given up hope of solving. But first, they had to dig deeper. And what emerged from that cold, wet earth would test both man and dog in ways they never could have anticipated. Marcus's hands were numb from the cold and mud as he helped Rex clear away more earth from around the monument. What had started as a simple patrol was turning into something that made his years of police experience scream warnings in his head. But Rex's behavior left no room for doubt. The dog had found something, and in all their years as partners, Rex had never been wrong. The blue fabric was attached to more blue fabric. Marcus carefully brushed away dirt with his fingers, revealing what appeared to be a child's jacket. His heart hammered against his ribs. Missing children were every officer's nightmare, and Riverside had an unsolved case that had haunted the department for over 2 years. Emma Collins, 8 years old, last seen wearing a blue windbreaker. Marcus forced himself to breathe steadily as he continued excavating around the jacket. Rex had moved to another spot 3 feet away and was digging again, his powerful claws scraping against something hard in the earth. Not bone. Marcus had seen enough crime scenes to know that sound. This was different. Plastic, maybe. Or metal. The rain was making everything more difficult. What should have been careful evidence preservation was turning into an emergency excavation in increasingly muddy conditions. Marcus knew he should stop, should call this in immediately, and let the forensics team handle it properly. But something about Rex's urgency made him keep going. Rex's second hole was revealing corners of what looked like a metal box, old-fashioned, like the kind used for storing documents or valuables. As Marcus helped clear the dirt away, he could see that it was deliberately buried, not lost or accidentally dropped, but carefully placed and covered. The box was locked, but years in the ground had corroded the mechanism enough that Marcus was able to force it open with his pocket knife. Inside, wrapped in plastic bags, were items that made his breath catch in his throat. Photographs, dozens of them, and not just of Emma Collins. Marcus recognized faces from missing persons reports going back years. Children who'd disappeared from surrounding towns. Adults who'd vanished without a trace. Some of the photos looked professional, like school pictures or family portraits. Others appeared to be taken without the subject's knowledge. Candid shots taken from a distance, through windows, across parking lots. But it was what else was in the box that made Marcus's hands shake as he reached for his radio. Driver's licenses, social security cards, a child's bracelet that he remembered from Emma Collins's missing person flyer, and underneath it all, a detailed notebook filled with handwriting that documented times, locations, and what appeared to be surveillance notes. Rex had stopped digging and was now sitting alert beside Marcus, his eyes scanning the darkness around them. The German Shepherd's training was kicking in. After finding the evidence, his job was now to protect it and his handler. But his ears were constantly swiveling, picking up sounds that Marcus couldn't detect. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47, Marcus spoke quietly into his radio. "I need immediate backup and a forensics team at Riverside Cemetery. We've uncovered potential evidence related to multiple missing persons cases." The dispatcher's voice crackled back through the static. "Unit 47, repeat your location and the nature of the evidence." Before Marcus could respond, Rex stood up abruptly and faced the cemetery's entrance. The dog's hackles were raised, and a low growl rumbled in his chest. Someone was coming. Marcus quickly closed the metal box and slipped it into his jacket. He turned off his flashlight and motioned for Rex to follow him behind the large monument. In the darkness, they could hear the sound of a vehicle approaching the cemetery's parking lot. A car door slammed, footsteps on gravel, then the squeak of the cemetery's iron gate opening. Through the mist and shadows, Marcus could see the beam of a powerful flashlight sweeping across the graveyard. The person carrying it moved with purpose, heading directly toward their location. Not the random movements of someone looking around or checking for vandalism. This person knew exactly where they were going. Rex was trembling with controlled energy beside Marcus. The German Shepherd wanted to act, but his training kept him waiting for his handler's command. Marcus's mind raced through their options. Backup was at least 10 minutes away. They were isolated in an abandoned cemetery with someone who might be connected to multiple disappearances. The flashlight beam was getting closer. Marcus could hear the person's breathing now, labored and anxious. Whoever this was, they weren't just a casual visitor to the cemetery. Then the beam of light swept across the area where they'd been digging, and Marcus heard something that chilled him to the bone. A sharp intake of breath, followed by muttered cursing. Whoever this was, they'd noticed the disturbed earth around the monument. Marcus made a decision that went against every instinct of police training. Instead of revealing himself and confronting the person, he waited and watched, because sometimes the best way to solve a mystery was to let it unfold. What happened next would prove that Rex's incredible discovery was just the beginning of something much larger and darker than anyone in Riverside had imagined. The person searching the cemetery that night was looking for something specific, and their reaction to finding the disturbed earth would reveal a connection to the missing persons cases that went deeper than anyone suspected. But as Marcus and Rex crouched in the shadows, watching and waiting, neither of them realized that they'd stumbled into the middle of something that had been carefully planned for years, and their discovery was about to put both their lives in immediate danger. The figure with the flashlight moved closer to the monument, and Marcus could see it was a man, average height, wearing dark clothing and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He knelt beside the holes they'd dug, examining the disturbed earth with the careful attention of someone who knew exactly what should be there. Rex's muscles were coiled like springs. The German Shepherd could sense Marcus's tension, could smell the stranger's fear and agitation. Every instinct told the dog to protect his handler, but he remained perfectly still, waiting for the signal that never came during their active duty days, but which he remembered perfectly. The silent hand gesture that meant, "Watch and wait." The stranger stood up and pulled out a cell phone. In the quiet cemetery air, Marcus could hear fragments of a whispered conversation. "They found it. Yes, I'm sure. The box is gone. No, I don't know who." Could be anyone. Marcus felt a cold realization wash over him. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone had been using this cemetery as a storage location, and Rex had uncovered evidence that was never meant to be found. The carefully planned nature of it, using an abandoned cemetery, burying evidence beneath an old monument, suggested organization and premeditation that went far beyond impulse crimes. The man on the phone was becoming more agitated. He began searching the area around the monument with his flashlight, looking behind headstones and scanning the ground for any sign of who might have been there. His search pattern was systematic, professional. Marcus realized with growing unease that they might be dealing with someone with law enforcement or military training. Rex's growl was barely audible, but Marcus felt the vibration through the ground where they both crouched. The German Shepherd had detected something Marcus couldn't, a second person approaching from another direction. Through the mist, Marcus saw another flashlight beam moving between the headstones from the cemetery's back entrance. Now they were potentially trapped between two unknown individuals in a deserted location, with evidence of multiple crimes hidden in Marcus's jacket. The second person approached the monument, and Marcus could hear their conversation more clearly. How much did they take? The newcomer's voice was female, calm, and controlled in a way that was somehow more frightening than the man's obvious panic. "Everything. The box, all of it. Someone's been here with a dog. Look at these paw prints in the mud." Marcus's heart nearly stopped. They'd identified Rex's tracks. His retired police dog, who was supposed to be enjoying peaceful walks in the park, had just become a liability in the most dangerous way possible. The woman knelt and examined the paw prints with her flashlight. German Shepherd, I'd guess. Large, well trained by the way it moved around the site. This wasn't random. Someone was specifically searching. "Police?" the man asked, his voice tight with fear. Maybe. Or someone who knows what they're looking for. She stood up and swept her flashlight in a wider arc. Either way, we need to contain this situation immediately. Marcus felt for his radio, but before he could key the microphone, Rex made a decision that changed everything. A cat, probably feral, living in the cemetery, had emerged from behind a headstone about 20 yards away. Rex, despite his training, despite the danger, despite everything that told him to stay hidden, couldn't ignore his deeply ingrained chase instinct. The German shepherd bolted from their hiding spot, barking as he ran toward the cat. "There!" the woman shouted, her flashlight beam catching Rex mid-stride. "Get the dog!" Marcus had no choice now. He stood up from behind the monument, his own flashlight in one hand and his service weapon drawn in the other. "Police, stop right there!" The man panicked and ran toward the cemetery entrance, but the woman stood her ground. In the crossing beams of their flashlights, Marcus could see her clearly for the first time. Mid-40s, professional clothing beneath a dark jacket, and eyes that showed no fear, only calculation. "Officer," she said calmly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Marcus replied, keeping his weapon trained on her while trying to track Rex's position, "is thinking you could use this cemetery as your personal evidence locker." She smiled, and it was the most chilling thing Marcus had ever seen. Evidence of what, exactly? Two people visiting a cemetery at night. That's not illegal, last I checked. Rex had given up chasing the cat and was now circling back toward them, but his attention was divided between protecting Marcus and tracking the scents he'd found. The German shepherd was confused by the multiple stimuli, the strangers, the evidence they'd uncovered, and the chaotic energy of the confrontation. "The box," Marcus said. "The photographs. The personal effects of missing children." Her expression didn't change. "I don't know what you're talking about, and unless you can prove those items came from this specific location, you have nothing but speculation." Marcus realized she was right. Without proper chain of custody, without witnesses, without the controlled environment of an official investigation, anything he'd found could be challenged in court. But Rex's alert had been genuine, and the evidence was real, regardless of how it had been discovered. "My dog doesn't lie," Marcus said. "He found human scent at this exact location, buried beneath that monument. That's not speculation." The woman's calm facade cracked slightly. "Your retired police dog, you mean? The one who's no longer officially qualified for evidence detection? The one you've been bringing on unauthorized patrols?" Marcus felt his stomach drop. She knew about Rex's retirement. She knew about their unofficial partnership. This wasn't a random criminal operation. Someone had been watching them, studying their patterns. Rex had positioned himself between Marcus and the woman, his body low and ready. The German shepherd might be retired, but his protective instincts were as sharp as ever. And right now, those instincts were screaming that the calm woman with the flashlight represented a very real threat. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't have anticipated, was that their discovery of the buried evidence was about to expose a network of crimes that had been operating in plain sight for years. The woman standing in front of him wasn't just connected to the missing persons cases. She was the key to understanding how children and adults had been disappearing from small towns across 3 states without anyone connecting the dots. And Rex, the retired police dog who was supposed to be enjoying his golden years, had just uncovered the most important case of his career. But solving it would require both man and dog to survive the next few minutes in an abandoned cemetery with someone who had already proven they were willing to kill to protect their secrets. The standoff in the misty cemetery stretched on, with Marcus keeping his weapon trained on the woman while Rex positioned himself defensively between them. But the woman's confidence suggested she wasn't as trapped as she appeared to be. She kept glancing toward the cemetery's entrance, and Marcus realized she was waiting for something or someone. "You know what I find interesting, Officer Chen," she said, using his name for the first time. Marcus's blood ran cold. A retired canine unit making unauthorized patrols, tampering with a crime scene, removing evidence without proper documentation. That's going to be a very difficult story to tell your superiors. Before Marcus could respond, the sound of multiple vehicles arriving at the cemetery entrance cut through the night air. Car doors slammed in quick succession, too many for backup units responding to his call. "I told you we should have contained this immediately," the woman said to herself, then looked directly at Marcus. "Now it's going to get messy." Marcus's radio crackled to life. "Unit 47, this is command. We're showing your GPS location at Riverside Cemetery, but we never received your backup request. What's your status?" Marcus stared at his radio in confusion. He'd definitely called for backup. But looking at the display, he realized his transmission had never gone through. The cemetery's location, surrounded by construction zones and interference from the nearby highway, created a dead zone for radio communications. They were completely on their own. The woman pulled out her own radio. Not police issue, but something more sophisticated. "Team leaders, we have a containment situation. 1 officer, 1 retired K9, civilian patrol, not official department business." Marcus heard acknowledgements from multiple voices. Professional, coordinated, military-style communication. This wasn't a criminal operation. It was something much more organized. Rex's behavior was becoming increasingly agitated. The German Shepherd could smell multiple people approaching the cemetery from different directions. His training told him to alert and protect, but the confusing mix of scents and the unusual situation had him struggling to identify friend from foe. "Who are you people?" Marcus demanded, but even as he asked, pieces were starting to fall into place. The professional coordination, the knowledge of his patrol patterns, the sophisticated equipment, the way the woman spoke about containment rather than escape. "My name is Special Agent Sarah Mitchell, FBI, the woman said, reaching slowly into her jacket to pull out credentials. "This cemetery has been under surveillance as part of a federal investigation into a human trafficking network. Your dog just compromised 2 years of undercover work." Marcus felt the world shift beneath his feet. Human trafficking? But the evidence, the photographs, the missing children? "Bait," Agent Mitchell said simply. "Planted evidence designed to draw out the real perpetrators. We've been running a long-term operation to identify and capture a network that's been operating across multiple states. Your retired partner just dug up our carefully placed decoy." Rex was pacing now, his confusion growing. The scents around the cemetery told a story that didn't match what his handler was experiencing. Too many people, too much coordination, too much planning for a random criminal encounter. "The missing children," Marcus said, his mind racing. "Emma Collins is safe, has been safe for 18 months. She's been in witness protection after we recovered her from the trafficking network, along with 12 other children whose disappearances we've been investigating." Marcus lowered his weapon slightly. "Then why?" "Because the network is still active, and they monitor police radio frequencies, news reports, social media. Every time a child goes missing, every time evidence surfaces, they adjust their operations. So we've been feeding them false information while we tracked their real activities." The sound of footsteps approaching through the cemetery grew closer. Marcus could see multiple flashlight beams converging on their location from different directions. "Your dog's alert tonight," Agent Mitchell continued, "was absolutely correct. He detected human scent at that location, scent from the evidence we planted there. But what you couldn't know, is that removing that evidence just sent a signal to some very dangerous people that their operation has been compromised." Rex suddenly stopped pacing and faced the cemetery's main entrance. His hackles raised, and he let out a low, warning bark. This was different from his earlier alerts. This was the sound he made when he detected immediate, serious threat. "They're here," Agent Mitchell said quietly into her radio. "All teams, the targets have arrived at the primary location." Marcus heard car engines being shut off in the parking lot, doors closing quietly, the careful, deliberate movements of people trying not to be detected. But Rex's exceptional hearing had picked up sounds that human ears couldn't process. "The real traffickers?" Marcus asked. "3 of them. They've been monitoring this location because they suspected we were getting close. Your dog's digging tonight triggered their security protocols. They came to verify whether their operation was truly compromised." Agent Mitchell moved closer to Marcus, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I need you and your partner to trust me for the next few minutes. These people have killed federal agents before. They won't hesitate to eliminate a local officer and his dog if they think you can identify them." Rex was trembling with controlled energy. Every aspect of his training was telling him to act, to protect, to apprehend. But the complex scents and sounds around the cemetery were overwhelming his ability to distinguish between targets and allies. "What do you need us to do?" Marcus asked. "Your dog. Can he track and detain without killing?" "He's trained for apprehension, but Rex has never seriously injured anyone. He's a detection specialist, not an attack dog." Agent Mitchell nodded. "Perfect. Because we need these people alive. 2 years of investigation will be worthless if we can't get them to reveal the locations of their other operations." The flashlight beams from the cemetery entrance were getting closer. Marcus could hear muffled voices coordinating a search pattern. Professional, systematic, thorough. These weren't panicked amateurs, but experienced criminals who understood how to operate in hostile territory. Rex looked up at Marcus, waiting for direction. In all their years as partners, they'd never faced anything like this. But the German Shepherd's trust in his handler was absolute. Whatever Marcus asked him to do, Rex would attempt. What happened in the next few minutes would determine whether 2 years of federal investigation would culminate in arrests that could dismantle an entire criminal network, or whether Marcus and Rex would become loose ends that needed to be eliminated. Because the people searching the cemetery weren't just trafficking in humans, they were protecting a multi-million-dollar operation that extended far beyond anything the small town of Riverside had ever encountered. And Rex, the retired police dog who'd stumbled onto the biggest case of his career, was about to prove that age and retirement hadn't diminished his ability to make a difference when it mattered most. Agent Mitchell's team moved through the cemetery with practiced precision, but it was Rex who provided the crucial advantage. The German Shepherd's exceptional night vision and scent detection allowed him to track the movements of the 3 traffickers, even when the federal agents couldn't see them. Marcus found himself in the strangest partnership of his law enforcement career, working with federal agents to apprehend criminals using a retired police dog who technically wasn't supposed to be there. But Rex's performance that night was flawless. Years of training and instinct converged as he silently guided the operation through the maze of headstones and monuments. The first trafficker was taken down near the cemetery's back gate. Rex had detected the man's position behind a large mausoleum and alerted Agent Mitchell's team with a series of subtle signals that Marcus translated in real time. The apprehension was swift and quiet. No shots fired, no struggle, no opportunity for the other criminals to be alerted. The second target proved more challenging. He'd positioned himself near the cemetery's center, using the elevated foundation of an old chapel as a vantage point. But Rex's ability to separate individual scents in a complex environment allowed him to determine not just where the man was, but which direction he was facing and whether he was armed. "Your dog is incredible," Agent Mitchell whispered as they maneuvered around the chapel. "We've been trying to get a clean approach on that position for 10 minutes. Marcus felt a surge of pride. Rex might be officially retired, but his skills were as sharp as ever. The German Shepherd was working with the focused intensity Marcus remembered from their best cases. Alert, responsive, completely in tune with his handler's needs. The third trafficker presented the greatest danger. He'd taken a defensive position near the cemetery's main monument and was clearly prepared for confrontation. Through night vision equipment, the federal team could see he was armed and appeared to be trying to coordinate with backup via radio. "We need to move fast," Agent Mitchell said. "If he contacts their external security, this entire operation could escalate beyond our control." Rex had been monitoring the situation from multiple angles, using his mobility to gather information that stationary human observers couldn't obtain. He'd identified not just the man's position, but his stress level, his state of alertness, and the fact that he was focused entirely on the cemetery's entrance rather than the interior approaches. Marcus made a decision that went against every protocol he'd ever learned. "Rex can get behind him. If I give the signal, he'll create a distraction that will give your team a clean approach. That's putting your dog at risk," Agent Mitchell pointed out. "Rex has been at risk his entire career," Marcus replied. "The difference is tonight he chose to be here." The coordinated approach took less than 3 minutes. Rex moved through the cemetery like a shadow, using headstones and monuments for cover, with an intelligence that impressed even the experienced federal agents. When Marcus gave the signal, a silent hand gesture the German Shepherd had learned years ago, Rex created precisely the distraction needed. The retired police dog emerged from behind the main monument with a bark that echoed through the entire cemetery. Not an attack, not aggression, but the authoritative command bark of a working canine ordering a suspect to halt. The trafficker spun toward the sound, his weapon raised, giving Agent Mitchell's team the opening they needed for a clean takedown. All three criminals were in custody within minutes. No shots fired, no injuries, no opportunity for the trafficking network to realize their operation had been compromised until federal agents were already moving against their other locations across 3 states. As dawn broke over Riverside Cemetery, Marcus stood beside Rex watching FBI technicians process evidence from multiple sites throughout the graveyard. The box Rex had originally discovered was indeed planted bait, but the dog's exceptional scent detection had also led to the recovery of actual evidence that had been buried in other locations. 18 children recovered alive, Agent Mitchell told Marcus, as federal vehicles began leaving the cemetery. 4 adults rescued from forced labor situations, a trafficking network that's been operating for 6 years, completely dismantled. And it started with your dog refusing to ignore what he smelled. Rex was exhausted but alert, his tail wagging slowly as he received attention from federal agents and forensic technicians who'd heard about his performance. The retired police dog had become the hero of a federal operation, all because he couldn't resist investigating an interesting scent during what should have been a routine patrol. Marcus scratched behind Rex's ears, feeling a mixture of pride and amazement. "You know what this means, don't you? You're probably going to get some kind of federal commendation, maybe even a ceremony." Rex wagged his tail and pressed against Marcus's leg. The German Shepherd didn't care about ceremonies or commendations. He'd done what he was trained to do, what his instincts told him was right. He'd protected his handler and helped solve a case. For a working dog, that was enough. As they walked back toward their patrol car, Marcus realized that retirement didn't mean the end of service. It just meant choosing when and how to serve. Rex had made his choice that night, and it had made all the difference. The local news would later report that a joint federal-local operation had resulted in major arrests related to human trafficking. They wouldn't mention the retired police dog whose curiosity had started it all, or the officer who trusted his partner's instincts even when it meant breaking protocol. But Marcus knew, and Rex knew, and that was what mattered. That night, the dog didn't just uncover evidence. He uncovered hope for families who thought they'd never see their loved ones again, hope for victims who'd given up on rescue, and hope that even in retirement, a good dog's work is never truly done. 6 months later, Rex would receive a special recognition from the FBI for his role in dismantling the trafficking network. But more importantly, he'd return to work part-time with the Riverside Police Department, proving that some partnerships are too valuable to end just because of a birthday or a policy change. That night, as Marcus and Rex drove home through the early morning light, both of them knew they'd been part of something extraordinary. A routine patrol that became a federal case. A retired dog who proved that service is about heart, not age. And a partnership that had evolved from professional duty to something deeper. A bond that made them both better at what they were meant to do.